Camping near Hadrian's Wall, we drove to the west to start our exploration of this area. Our first stop was at the now remote, isolated Bewcastle. It wasn't always like this, as in 122 AD, when Hadrian built the wall to separate Romans from barbarians, he placed one of his outpost forts here. Later, around 1092, when Cumberland was taken from Scotland by William II of England, a castle was built in the northeast corner of the fort. Next to the castle is St Cuthbert's Church. An Anglo-Saxon cross dating from the 7th or 8th century stands in the churchyard. The crosspiece is missing, but the runic inscriptions are clearly visible. The gravestones, however, haven't fared quite as well and have a distinctly drunken appearance. The church was built around 1277 using stones from the fort, rebuilt in 1792 and altered to its present form in 1901. At the western end of Hadrian's Wall, the old bridge at Lanercost was built over the River Irthing in 1724. It's now only used by pedestrians and cyclists, as a new road bridge was built in 1964. Nearby Lanercost Priory was built around 1170 with stone from Hadrian's Wall to house Augustinian canons, though the bulk of the priory dates from the 13th century. It was repeatedly raided by Scots, who not only stole treasures but took monks hostage for ransom. The priory was dissolved in 1538 by Henry VIII, and most buildings were stripped of their roofs, except for the church, which stayed in use as the parish church. "200 yards away is Bank's Turret, the best preserved observation tower in the western sector of Hadrian's Wall, with far-reaching views over the surrounding countryside. To the east, a footpath crosses the railway line and the stream before climbing the hill to Thirlwell Castle, which is often used for school visits. This impressive family stronghold was built in the early 14th century. Its thick, high walls were built from recycled Roman stone and helped repel attacks from unwelcome visitors during the Anglo-Scottish border raids in the 15th and 16th centuries. From the 17th century, after being abandoned by the Thirlwell family, it slowly fell into rack and ruin and was itself plundered for valuable building stone. Just off the 84-mile Hadrian's Wall path near Hotwhistle is Walltown Crags, an impressive stone outcrop and site of a former quarry. The National Trust property of Allen Banks lies to the south of the Hotwhistle to Hexham Road, with its deep gorge created by the River Allen and the largest area of ancient semi-natural woodland in Northumberland. This 617-acre site has a large network of marked trails. The woodlands are managed in a variety of ways to provide habitats for lots of wildlife to thrive. The Orange Trail, the easy one that we took, leads to a pebbly beach at the side of the river where people bring their dogs for a swim. Sometimes they even go in themselves.
Good for you.
From here the path turns back and climbs steeply up the hillside. The path levels out and passes a tree that looks like a panting Alsatian dog before coming to the summer house. At one time there were several of these Victorian summer houses on the estate. The others have now gone, but this one has been reconstructed. The path then returns to the car park. Not far from Hexham, the B6295 passes through old lead mining country. Outside the pub in Allenheads, an old ore train is one of the many mining relics around this small settlement which was founded in the 1880s. The old bus garage is now a heritage centre and there is a cafe next door. The water in the well is rich in iron and has stained the walls rust red. At the back of the village, the old blacksmith shop houses a heritage display upstairs. On the ground floor, much of the forge and many of the blacksmith's tools are there to examine. Blacksmith shops are typically kept dark, so the colours of heated metal showed up clearly, so the blacksmith knew what temperature it was at. There's even an old treadle lathe. Behind the shops, the air vent is 70 metres deep and was sunk to give a flow of fresh air to the men working below the surface. At the bottom end of the village is the washing floor. Here partnerships of miners who had fixed a price with the mine owner to dig for lead ore stored it in their individual storage bays before it was crushed and washed. We wanted to know more about this process, so we went to the nearby Kilhope lead mining museum. This open-air museum is at the site of an old mine. The tunnel leads deep into the hillside and ore was brought out on rail trucks. Explosives used in the mining were stored well away for safety. As at Allenheads, the mining partnerships had their own storage bays. Here the ore was washed with water from the nearby stream. Crushed ore was repeatedly dumped in water and the heavy lead ore sank to the bottom, leaving spoil on top. Miners lived in appalling conditions, 32 to a room and 3 to 4 to a bed. More men and boys died of TB than in mining accidents. The manager's office next door looks more comfortable. Water held in reservoirs on the hilltop above the site was used to power the ore crushing machinery. The water ran down this channel and along the chute to drive the water wheel. A nature trail runs through the site and past the reservoir. It passes a group of yurts which can be hired for day events or overnight stays. Visitors leave through the indoor museum where they can see examples of different types of lead ore and interesting crystal displays which were made by the 19th century miners. Close to Hadrian's Wall, east of Haltwhistle, is Vindolanda. Excavations, which reach a depth of 6 metres, are still going on. The lack of oxygen at this depth means that objects made of wood are still perfectly preserved. Further along the road is a 19th century lime kiln, where limestone was burnt with coal to produce quicklime. This was slaked with water and spread on farmland to neutralise acid soil. Next comes Brocolitia. Here are the ruins of a small temple dedicated to the Roman god Mithras, which was built around 200 AD. From here there is a pleasant drive north through Kielder Forest, England's largest, leading eventually to Kielder Water, the biggest man-made lake in northern Europe. Wallington Hall in Northumberland belongs to the National Trust. The main gate leads into the courtyard and plant centre. Passing the house, a path leads across the lawn and through a small wood to a gate to the road. Once across the road, the path winds through the east wood where it passes the China Pond with its rhododendrons and azaleas. Dotted around the woods are giant wicker flowers. The path then comes to the garden pond where giant gunnera grows. At the end of the pond was a family of ducks. This mother had her hands full, or should we say wings full. She had 12 ducklings. There was also a family of moorhens and lots of dragonflies. Next to the pond is the walled garden, which is festooned with wisteria. At the back of the walled garden is the conservatory, which has a good display of amaryllis. Outside, the path meanders through the walled garden itself. At the bottom of the walled garden is a small pond.
And we walked all the way down that side. Yes.
The path returns past the wisteria to a small terrace by a goldfish pond. The exit road leaves the estate over a bridge. Just south of Hexham, the narrow stone Lennell's Bridge over Devil's Water is thought to have been built in 1698. It has an inscribed tablet from an earlier bridge of 1581. 8 miles further south, the conservation village of Blanchland sits in the Derwent Valley. The picturesque houses, built of stone taken from the 12th century abbey, surround an open square. The village has been used in several period films. The parish church is still called Blanchland Abbey by the locals and is all that is left of the original abbey, but with many 18th and 19th century modifications. In the churchyard is the grave of a man reputed to have been cruelly murdered in the village. Nearby is the Derwent Reservoir. Unusually, this isn't a flooded valley, but was dug out of the ground and the earth removed was used to build the dam. On the edge of Newcastle is the National Trust estate of Gibside. The path from the car park leads to the chapel, which was built between 1759 and 1816. It looks like a classical temple with a domed roof rising above a Greek-style portico. This is surrounded by formal gardens. There's a series of marked walks, and this one through the orchards passes displays and pennons made by the local sewing club during lockdown. It then goes through an area of rhododendrons and flowers. Rounding this rhododendron bush, we came upon the ruins of the great two-listed 18th century orangery. The walk continues through the woods and up into a meadow. From here, there is a distant view of the ruins of Gibside Hall. The house became vacant in the 1920s, fell into disrepair and is now on the Heritage at Risk Register. Through the woods is a Doric column topped by a standing bronze female figure called the Column to Liberty. The walk returns to the chapel via the avenue, with views down to the orangery below.